Okay, so I reviewed these workflows, made a few changes. I'm going to go through each one and show you what I did. On the call yesterday, we talked about how we might handle setting the permissions for emails potentially. So, and to do that properly, you should set them when the contact's created, but not when updated. So I split out the created and updated. I need to change the name of this. This is actually yes, contact updated. Now, and I saw you didn't have an update trigger at all. I think you might want it so that if you change a contact field, any data, add a note, it'll push that change to MindBody. There's not really a risk or downside to doing it, so I think you would want it. But if you are doing an update, contact update, you do not want to set the flags for, we have some optional flags that can set the permissions for email. As I mentioned, we cannot affect SMS or text permissions in MindBody, but we can affect email. So the only parameter is going to be site ID, which should be populated in this custom value once you turn on the integration for sub account. So this is pretty simple, straightforward. You can just set it, let it run in the background, it'll work. Okay, so that's update. This is for contact created. You had this in here. The only change I made was to add, I took the site ID out of there and put it down here and then added these parameters to set these two fields, send account emails and send schedule emails, both to true. I'm not setting send promotional emails to true. We'll just leave that alone. So this would, by default, set those to true for new clients. You can change this depending on how your conversation went with corporate, but that's what we have right now. I don't know if I changed anything. Let's save it just to be safe. All right, then we have, you had a few different workflows in place that would be for like contact or appointment confirmed or appointment canceled. And for originally, we had to have a different workflow for each of those, for each status change and for each calendar. We've improved that greatly, simplified it. So now you can have a single workflow that would work for all calendars and any status change. So it doesn't matter if it's appointment confirmed or canceled or no show or anything. We'll just capture the status, pass it through to the webhook in the background. So you don't need to pass it as a parameter anymore. Let's change this to use the more modern parameter passing. See that? Okay, so this is good to go. You can leave this on. The one thing I want to talk about is triggers. So right now, I have it set so it'll trigger on any appointment status update, regardless of what calendar it's from. If you want it to only trigger on certain calendars, you would need to add a filter like this in calendar and then select the calendar. And you'd have to have multiple triggers, one for each calendar. That I'll leave that to you. It's probably fine if you leave it like it is. If something triggers that's not actually mapped in MB Sync, it's just going to ignore it anyway. So it's a pretty safe catch-all for you. And then I'm going to skip the D&D and come to this one. So on that note about triggers, I wanted to point something out here. So I know you were just copying something similar to an existing workflow. All these triggers, I assume, are for different calendars, different appointment types. So you'd need to set this calendar. But again, let's see. I just want to see something. Okay, so you need independent triggers. I was going to say you don't necessarily need to split these triggers out, but because of your conditionals, you do. So that's fine. You just need to make sure you set the calendar when it's in production for each of these. The one other thing I would do for appointment reminders, this is completely based on the assumption that you don't want to send reminders to like existing clients who are booking appointments. This whole workflow is primarily intended for leads that are coming in a trial or something. If that assumption is wrong, then ignore this, get rid of what I added. But most people we work with do not want to be sending constant reminders for every class someone ever books. It's only like the first one or first few while they're getting started. So if you want to filter out existing members, you need to do something like this. I can't do it because I don't have access to add a custom field, but you would need to filter by the custom field MB client type, which will get set by our integration. It'll be either prospect or member. If it's set to member, then you would need to filter them out. So if pretend this says MB client type does not contain member, then it would kick them out. If it does, then they can continue and follow your logic, which I didn't touch anything else in there. So this is what it looks like in if the custom field was there. So you'd say that. So you can decide for yourself if you want to filter out existing members. One thing to note, if you are using that, I'll show you. If you're using this MB client type custom field, you want to make sure that you have set it up properly. So I will show you what that looks like. I'm just going to jump into a random one here. All right, so you would need to go into your settings, go into membership assignments, and select which pricing options you want to count as memberships. By default, we'll populate this with anything that is already identified as membership in Mindbody, but sometimes clients have additional things like class packs or whatever that they count as a membership. So they treat them as a member and not a prospect if they purchase that thing. So if these are set, then it will populate this custom field and be client type, change it to member instead of prospect. So having said all that, I think your account is good to go. I think your workflows are good. One other thing to mention, I think, um, where is it? I think you might want to consider going back to our snapshot, and I think you would get some benefit out of the retained member folder. All these are just driven off the MB client status custom field, which is directly integrated with the Mindbody status. Has to do with payment, so you can take some automated actions like these indicate if payment was declined or expired or account was suspended or terminated. You could have a campaign to automatically message that client and correct the issue or whatever. So not essential, but definitely helpful, and I think your clients would appreciate this. All right, thanks.